The Health Fix podcast teaches you how to take charge of your health naturally by giving you the information you need to elevate your health.
Hello there, health junkies. Today on The Health Fix, I'm interviewing peace and freedom activist and owner of Brave Botanicals, John Bush. We are going to be talking all about Kratom. It's an herbal remedy made from the leaves of a Southeast Asian evergreen tree. Kratom is illegal in 6 states and a bit controversial with the FDA. So is CBD, though. In the last 5 years, I've had a lot of patients whisper to me that they were taking Kratom, but it was helping them with things like anxiety, social anxiety, depression, ADD, pain, energy boosting, and more. I have supported them and made sure that they were taking it safely, always from a good, clean source, meaning someone that is testing their products just like John does, but also making sure that these folks were getting the proper dosage, starting off low, going slow, taking the minimal amount. Now, I think Kratom has merit and a lot of benefits. I like to combine it with other herbs such as American ginseng for energy boosting or passion flower for calming, even CBD for pain relief. I've seen pretty good results. Now, I believe we should have the right to use herbal medicines if benefits outweigh risks. Because herbs are, quote, natural, they should be respected, just as medicines are respected for side effects and dosages. I never want anyone to think that because something is natural or because it's an herb, it can't harm you. Heck yes, it can. You need to respect these things. Herbs definitely can harm you if taken improperly. And this is the big issue that the FDA has with Kratom is the folks that have overdosed on it, taken too much of it. That's what shows up in our feeds regularly online. Now, Kratom does have side effects, including tongue numbness, nausea, vomiting, dry mouth, need to urinate, constipation, aggression, hallucinations, delusions. Can also cause some thyroid issues. Kratom in large dosages can cause trouble with liver damage. That's the biggie. It's been noted death. I have not seen that in my practice. However, there have been stories online, so there you have it. Kratom can cause dependence when taken regularly in high dosages. John will talk about that in the podcast, so stay tuned for that. People who use Kratom can also have some issues with decreased appetite, diarrhea, muscle pain, spasms, twitches, watery eyes, anxiety, trouble sleeping, anger, hot flashes, and fever. Now, where did I get this list from? I got this list from a combination of WebMD and from the Mayo Clinic online. Now, I don't take any of these symptoms lightly. Definitely, if you are interested in taking Kratom, you want to be talking with your doctor, especially a doctor that is well-versed in using Kratom, such as a naturopathic doctor or an herbalist, so someone that's a doctor and an herbalist, and look for someone that can guide you through the use of this herb. That is the best way to be safe with it. I don't really want people playing around with herbs on their own and ramping up dosages too high. It gets tricky. I highly recommend getting some help. So, with that being said, that's my disclaimer for this podcast. Had to get that out. All right, now let's get on with the podcast. Hello there, health junkies. Welcome to another episode of The Health Fix. Today I have John Bush on the line, and we are going to be talking about Kratom. A lot of folks are wondering what it is, what can it do for you, things of that nature. So today we are going to go all through that and how it can be your health fix. So John, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me today.
Well, let's jump right in to how the heck did you get started with being interested in Kratom?
Well, I've been an activist for peace and freedom for more than half of my life and really concerned with the wars and the overreaching police state and surveillance states. And I bought a bookstore called Brave New Books here in Austin, Texas. And it was an anti-authoritarian spot. We did events and stuff, but people didn't really buy books. We mainly sold health products. And one of the health products my friend started packaging was Kratom. So we had it there sitting on the shelves, and it wasn't until the government tried to ban it in 2016, they failed, of course, that really people started buying it and it started blowing up. And it was around that time that I tried it myself. It really helped me with stress and anxiety and focus and just kind of taking the edge off. But the big impact, what really stuck for me, was witnessing how it transformed people's lives, people that were addicted to opioids or even heroin, people that were struggling with Adderall, people that were just stressed out all the time. To see the impact that it had on them really was important for me. And so I decided to lean into that, and a lot of people were really benefiting from it.
Oh, I love it. I love it. I mean, we have a huge opioid addiction issue, and we have, even alcohol is overused, and, so many different things. Why not find something that actually is going to benefit your nervous system versus damage it further? And, we're going to get into some political stuff today, folks. So, if you're not feeling like going that route, then I suggest you turn it off now, because we're diving there. We're going to get into it and talk about why the FDA does not want you to have Kratom. But before we go there, we better talk about what the heck is Kratom, because I think a lot of people have no idea what it is. It's kind of like CBD in terms of, well, now of course everybody and their brother knows what it is, but Kratom's kind of like that. Oh, can you get high? I don't know if we should talk about this in public. Is someone listening? Is my Alexa on? We're kind of in that world, right? So tell folks, what is Kratom? Tell us how we can take it. Let's just start first with what is Kratom. Let's start there.
Sure. Kratom is made from the powderized, dried up leaves of the Kratom evergreen tree, which is grown primarily in Southeast Asia. We import ours directly from Indonesia. It's a member of the coffee family, although it doesn't have caffeine. And there's a couple distinct varieties. There's green and white, and then there's the red varieties. And this has to do with the color of the leaves and the drying process. The red varieties tend to help people with chronic pain, relaxation, people that have trouble sleeping. They have a little bit more of a sedative effect. And then the green and white varieties, especially the white varieties, tend to be a little more uplifting, energetic, mood enhancing. Those people take for stress and anxiety. The white ones are a little bit more sharp on the energy and focus. And then the green ones tend to be a little more on the euphoria or the relaxation end, but a great balance between the red and the white. And essentially it's just a powder. You could take it in capsule form, which many people do. If you take the powder, I personally like to mix a couple teaspoons with like 16 ounces of water. Now it does taste kind of like bitter green tea, but for people that are into natural health and herbs and drink teas, they probably won't mind it. In fact, I actually like it. It's like a fine wine. You can kind of taste the variation and stuff. Some people mix it up with the juice. Some people do what's called a toss and wash, where you just put a whole dose in your mouth and then swig water and slam it down. I tried that once, but it's all different, folks. It is important for people that take it the first time, I should say, to take a very small, moderate amount, like maybe 1 or 2 capsules, or a half a teaspoon on a full stomach, just to make sure that it flows well with you. Don't just dive in and take 2 teaspoons or a tablespoon or something.
Yeah, that is a very big thing to note, because I've had some patients who just dove in with the Kratom, dove in headfirst with the CBD, and I've had a couple people that have had ER visits because of taking too much. So we definitely have to start slow. I always tell folks, start low, go slow. Now, do you happen to know in terms of milligrams what you might expect in terms of if there's a milligram dosage of Kratom or the most let's put it this way, standardized amount or anything of that nature? Or has it just kind of been found that the 1 capsule equals this or 1 teaspoon equals that? Do you know that by any chance?
Sure. So it's different for everyone's different physiology, as you know. So on our package, we have a suggested serving size of half a teaspoon to 1 teaspoon.
Okay.
Now, 1 teaspoon equates to around 1.75 grams.
Okay.
And so I still think that for beginners, half a teaspoon is a nice safe bet. Like I said, I personally take 2 good sized teaspoons. Some could say heaping teaspoons, but I take it pretty regularly. And so what I take would probably be around 6 grams or so.
Okay.
A capsule has around zero point 0.4 to 0.5 grams. So a teaspoon would be the equivalent of around 4 capsules.
Perfect. That's actually what I was trying to ask you, but it did not come out right.
I picked up what you're putting down.
Excellent. Love it. Love it. Yeah, that's kind of what I love folks to know a little bit about the gram dosage, because I think that's one of the things that the FDA tries to put out there is like, well, we don't have a standardized amount. Well, herbal medicine is never a standardized amount. It's what works to get you the effect. And sometimes we have to actually play with it a little bit. And so I think that's a really big, important concept for a lot of folks to really understand that as a naturopathic doctor, as an herbalist, herbs are different. They're not like capsulized medicines that are specifically made in a pharmaceutical, setting. So starting slow, starting low, that kind of thing. So let's talk a little bit about what you've seen in terms of folks that have been ordering from you in terms of let's go with the red type of kratom because it has a lot to do with pain. Do folks with let's go with the opioid addiction. Do folks with the opioid addiction tend to choose the red type, or do we find that we're getting mixes of the green, white, and red to get effect for folks with addictions?
I found, people that are struggling a little bit more with the opioids. And one of the big reasons why it helps is, of course, prescription opioids are mainly pain medicine, and people that experience chronic pain or have some sort of accident, it interacts with the opioid receptors that creates pain relief. And a lot of people have chronic pain, and on top of the chronic pain, they develop a dependency on the opioids. And then when people try to stop taking the opioids, they experience really extreme withdrawal symptoms. So the reason why there's such synergy between folks that are dealing with opioid dependency and kratom is because not only are people finding relief from the chronic pain in itself from a natural plant, the leaves of a plant, rather than a chemical pharmaceutical, but it also helps them to get through that withdrawal symptom stage. And I just listened to a TED Talk, I think it was from a few years ago, but it's this guy's 15-minute story of this really bad struggle with bad advice from his doctors on tapering down. They essentially got him hooked on the opioids, and then no one could give him any advice or support except to go to an addiction recovery clinic, which mainly catered to folks that were dependent for years and years, a different kind of dependency. And he was out there all alone. And so he ended up taking the pills again. And so when people take kratom, it really helps to minimize those withdrawal symptoms, and people are leaning more on the red for that. I have many customers. And again, this was why I was so touching, because I'm an activist by nature. This is an opportunity to not only earn a living and provide for my family, my kiddos, but also to help people. And I have many customers that were using heroin even, or were addicted to Oxycontin or Percocet for years and years and tried to quit. And then they learned of kratom, they tried it out, and literally within weeks, they were off of the pills with little to no withdrawal symptoms at all.
I love that. I love that. That's really what I wanted you to come on for, is talk about that a little bit, because I think folks are really left hanging. They're like, okay, I'm coming off these opioids. I have no freaking clue how to do so. My doc just left me hanging. And as a physician, there is no exact hey, this is what you're supposed to do. And oftentimes I will use kratom. I'll use other types of herbs as well to help folks in this department. But it's kind of the Wild West of all right, we got you addicted. Now you go figure it out. And not cool at all.
Yeah, in the TED Talk, the guy said his doctor recommended going back on the pills and trying again later, which isn't really a solution. Now, I do want to say, so I'm always really honest and upfront about kratom and some of the risks. And, some people just try to sell it as some panacea, or it's, there's nothing wrong with it because it's a plant, but it can become habit forming itself. And for people that take a whole lot of it, like half an ounce or an ounce a day, which normally would last someone 2 weeks, they can become dependent on it. and they can have withdrawal symptoms themselves. Now, mind you, the withdrawal symptoms won't be as severe as coming off of opioids or opiates, but it is something that nonetheless people need to use responsibly, which is why I suggest if people have it as part of their daily routine, they take it regularly to deal with chronic pain or stress and anxiety or whatever. It's important to take a few days off here and there to give your body an opportunity to reset, to maybe give your kidneys and your liver a break. And so you don't develop a tolerance where you find yourself taking more and more to have the desired effect.
I love that you mentioned that. That is huge. That is absolutely huge. Big thing there. So let's talk about safety for a minute, because of course we're going to dive into the FDA and why they want to keep the kratom from the population. But I think the biggest thing that I get from a lot of patients is, well, it comes from Asia, so it's going to have lead in it. Kind of the same thing as all the Chinese herbs out there. Can you first speak a little bit to your sourcing from Indonesia and some of the quality assurance checks, and then go into safety in terms of kratom? And by that, I kind of want to go into any drug interactions, things of that nature, because you've already kind of talked about a possible addiction in high amounts, but let's kind of jump from there and kind of give folks the scoop on that.
Yeah, so for about 2.5 years now, we've been using the same vendor, farmer in Indonesia. And he's a very trusted, reputable source. There's other folks here in the US that order from them as well. And essentially it's grown almost wildly. Like on our website, you can search Brave Botanicals Kratom Farm and that'll pull it up. We have pictures of the forest where we source the kratom from. And it's not like row crops or monocrops or anything like that. It just looks like a wild grown forest. So because of that, there's no need for any pesticides or any chemicals. Well, there's not any need for that stuff anyway, but there's even less of a need because it's almost completely wild grown. Now, they are like planting trees and cultivating and stuff, but it's right there along with the forest and the naturally grown kratom trees as well. And so we do periodic tests for salmonella, heavy metals, and the purity of the kratom. We're not testing every single batch that comes in because, again, we have this reliable vendor and we've never had any issues, not once. But when we do the test for heavy metals and stuff, it always comes back clean and it's pure kratom powder, not with any adulterants or anything added, which is one of the reasons why the FDA and state governments say they're concerned, because they say people are adding stuff to the kratom. They even say people are adding fentanyl to the kratom, which maybe that's happened once or twice. I don't know if that's like an epidemic of things happening, but it's always important. Like you were saying earlier with Chinese herbs and with naturopathy and people taking their health into their own hands, it's always important to exercise personal responsibility, do your due diligence, do your research, and purchase these herbs and natural remedies from a trusted source.
Absolutely. That is exactly what I was wanting to hear from you. I'm like, I hope there's some testing going on. I hope we've got some purity. Now, what about over-harvesting? Is there any concern for over-harvesting the product, kind of like what we've done with certain herbs, unfortunately, in the U.S., such as Romania root or rhodiola, things of that nature? Is there any concern for that?
No, after the DEA tried to ban it, they shot themselves in the foot and exploded in popularity. And I think there's been a surge, probably the likes that kratom has never experienced. For hundreds of years, it was mainly in like a folk remedy in Southeast Asia. Interestingly enough, they would use it in Southeast Asia to help give them energy when they're working in the fields and stuff, but they also used it to help with opium addiction. So it's very similar uses here in the West, but even though it's exploded in popularity, there's still plenty of kratom to go around. Like I said, it's wild grown. It's literally growing on trees all over the place. And so I don't think that it's being over farmed. And the cool thing is that, $1 in Indonesia goes a lot further than $1 here in the States. So it's fulfilling to help, provide so much sustenance and economic growth for these small Indonesian farmers.
Okay, I was talking a little bit about safety, and I think one of the big things a lot of folks ask me about, and I'd love to hear your opinion on this, is can kratom be combined with someone who is on medications? Most commonly, folks who are on some of the heavier hitter medications, I'm probably going to say no, it's not safe. But, what about ibuprofen? What about Celebrex? Celebrex is a common anti-inflammatory, meloxicam, another common anti-inflammatory, Advil, things of that nature. Can you combine Kratom with this?
Okay, so first, for a disclaimer, I'm not a doctor or a naturopath or MD or anything, and it's always, like I said before, important for people to do their own due diligence. And if someone is genuinely concerned that they're on prescription medicine or anything else, then they can consult with their physician. However, sometimes when you consult with the physician about Kratom and stuff, sometimes they say, like, what the heck is that? Or the CDC says it's no good, so we better stay away from it. Although there are doctors, and I even have customers that are MDs that think very favorably of it. So the first thing, kind of a foundational thing, is because Kratom has an effect, and as you said earlier, like I think you were just being facetious, but Kratom doesn't get you high, but it does have an effect on your body, and you can definitely feel a difference when you take the Kratom. The alkaloids in Kratom, the main ones are mitragynine and 7-hydroxymitragynine. They do, carry some weight with them, and they can have be taxing on the liver and the kidneys, right? So that being said, if you're taking Kratom and then you're taking other medications that also take a toll on the liver and kidneys, then you may want to dial one of them back or be a little more conservative in taking that. If you're taking liver medication, that might be something to be concerned about. I've done some research as far as specific prescriptions that may be a little more concerning than others. When it comes to ibuprofen and stuff, and again, I'm not a doctor, I don't think that there's much of a concern. A lot of people that take regular, you're not supposed to take aspirin and stuff regularly, but people still do. Mm-hmm. They find that the Kratom gives them the pain relief that they would get from taking the Advil or the aspirin or the ibuprofen, and they can drop that stuff altogether. And when compared to something like ibuprofen, or when compared to many of these strong pharmaceuticals, the Kratom is definitely a lot better for your system and doesn't take as much of a toll on your organs. But liver medication would be something to be a little more cautious with. I've also read that monoamine oxidase inhibitors, which is an enzyme inhibitor, is something to be concerned about. There's some antidepressants that use those. And then there's the antipsychotic quetiapine, I think. There was an individual incidents that I read about in an actual scientific journal that had some concerns with someone taking that in Kratom. And then modafinil, which is an alternative to Adderall, which my life partner, I helped her to quit a dependency on Adderall using Kratom, our white lightning Kratom. She used it for focus, and she was diagnosed with ADHD, which I don't really buy into. I think people just, their brain fires a little faster, and sometimes it could be a gift rather than a disorder, but she did get overwhelmed, and her thoughts would be kind of scattered. She was able to quit the Adderall entirely after several years, maybe like half a decade or more, using Kratom. And she would also, in turn, because Adderall's meth. And so she would be like fired up when she'd get home from work, and she would drink alcohol in order to tap the brakes, as she would call it. And so she would drink kind of heavily sometimes, and she was able to really dramatically reduce her drinking and cut the Adderall completely with the aid of Kratom. So I always like that story. Those are the ones that there's also Carisoprodol, propylodextrine, and Datura stramonium, which is actually a natural herb. Yeah. Those are ones that I've read to be concerned about. I understand why some of these would be concerning, like the liver medication and then the enzyme inhibitor. But again, it's just really important for people to do their own research, to go with their gut. But as I said at the beginning, Kratom's a member of the coffee family, and when taken in really small amounts, it's relatively benign. So again, it goes back to personal responsibility, research. And if someone is genuinely concerned, or they're taking several prescriptions, then it's best to consult with their physician. But I do know that a lot of people have been actively taking opioids, and they combine with the Kratom to taper off of the opioids entirely.
Absolutely. I think the biggest thing that anyone out there should be thinking about right now, if you're thinking about kratom, find a naturopathic doctor, find an herbalist, find someone who really understands these herbs and understands medications and their interactions with your body. And really what I've done with a lot of folks, because even statin medications that are pretty hard on the liver, I've had some folks who are taking kratom with some of the statins for their cholesterol, and we just monitor the liver enzymes and, just like I said, start slow, stay low, and we just kind of find the minimal amount of the kratom that works for you. And so just having somebody keep an eye on you, I think, is the most important takeaway from that in general.
Yeah, that's a good point. And the liver enzyme tests can be very telling. The FDA is constantly putting out press releases and propaganda, and of course the mainstream media just takes it and runs with it. We can talk about that more, but one of the things that they said last year was that kratom causes liver damage, severe liver damage, they said. So I was like, okay, I've heard little whispers about this before. I went out and did my due diligence to try to find examples of that. And I came up with one study that said someone that was taking kratom every day for months on end and taking an extreme amount of kratom, like I mentioned before, I usually take like 6 grams or so a day. Somebody was taking like 28 grams or just a ton of kratom every single day for months and months on end, then you could be looking at a problem. But if people use it responsibly, use it moderately, take breaks, and as you said, if they're concerned, they do the liver enzyme tests, then should be pretty safe bet.
I absolutely agree. I think it's funny how the FDA likes to put out the liver. Same thing happened with kava about probably in the early 2000s when I just started naturopathic school. There was a big hating on kava, the herb kava. For the folks out there that don't know what kava is, it's a root that's used in the South Pacific most commonly. I mean, it's used in the US too, but it is a relaxing anti-anxiety herb. In fact, I just did my podcast episode 164 on it if you want to learn about that. But nevertheless, I just found it funny how that was kava is going to kill you because it's going to overload your liver. And when you look at what actually happened, it was someone who was taking too much and that happened. So same kind of thing that's going on with kratom. So John, why does the FDA want to keep kratom from us? What's the scoop? Give us the breakdown.
Well, the reason they say is because they believe it has no medical benefit whatsoever. They say that it's commonly adulterated with other substances like fentanyl. They've put out reports that there's been dozens of kratom-related deaths. They say kratom-related deaths. And then the CDC even went so far as to say there were 91 kratom-related deaths. Well, you go dig a little bit deeper, which most people don't do. They just read a sensationalist headline that says kratom, the herbal killer, and they just buy it hook, line, and sinker. But if you dig a little deeper, you find that of those 91, quote, kratom-related deaths, only 7 of them had kratom only in their system. Many of the other ones had fentanyl, heroin, all sorts of other opioids. And then some of those 7 that only had kratom, some of them were one of them was shot. One of them jumped off a roof. And so there's, and then again, some people could have really severe heart problems or whatever issue, and then they start taking kratom on top of that. But it's all just a lot of propaganda. And if you want to get the real answer as to why the FDA, the CDC, and the government in general doesn't like kratom, it's because there exists a revolving door in the American political system, every political system really, in this country, in this world, whereby corporations, big companies, the pharmaceutical industrial complex, to call them, they utilize the regulatory agencies in order to push out competitions that would hurt their bottom line. And when you consider that it's estimated that the kratom industry every year is around $5 billion, that's not an exact term, it's an estimate, but there's been some pretty good statistics to back that up, around $5 billion. And then I read the prescription opioid industry is $21 billion. That's a pretty considerable chunk of profit. And we literally have people, I see it in my own business, my own life, my girlfriend, for example, people are literally using kratom to stop taking the pharmaceutical prescriptions, whether it's Adderall or prescription opioids. So that represents a real threat. And again, it's a natural plant, so you can't patent it. You can't create a chemical and bottle it up and reproduce it in mass. So unfortunately, that's the way American politics work. But fortunately, there's programs like yours, there's naturopaths all over, there's people that are really exposing that. And I think more and more people, see the truth, and, the emperor wears no clothes. And so that's what's going on with that.
Thanks for sharing that and being real, because it's something that a lot of us struggle with. A lot of patients of mine are even scared to tell me that they take the CBD, even though CBD on its own without the THC, is legal at this point. And then CBD with THC, you get, depends on the state, much like Kratom in particular. I feel like Kratom's kind of going the same route as CBD and THC, I don't know, cannabis, I should probably just say, because it seems weird to kind of keep separating the two of them. Mm-hmm. Now, folks out there, I just wanted to mention some interesting components about Kratom. It's illegal in 6 states, and oddly in Denver. It's in the Denver proper, where Colorado, the whole state of Colorado, is cool with marijuana and cool with cannabis. Even Denver, cool with cannabis, but Kratom not. So weird. And even in California, I found it interesting that Kratom's legal in California, except for the city of San Diego. Like, What the heck is up with that?
Yeah, and in Denver, psilocybin, psychedelic mushrooms are now legal. So that's even more wacky. So, originally I thought it was a grand conspiracy of the pharmaceutical companies trying to shut Kratom down all over the place. But I think a lot of those 6 states, they grouped in Kratom with synthetic analogs like K2 or spice. Mm-hmm. Which is it's like a synthetic marijuana. There's like an epidemic in the homeless population, and people smoke it and just kind of get whacked out and like kind of convulse on the floor and stuff. It's bad news. It's chemical, it's synthetic. And so I believe ignorant lawmakers and bureaucrats would go to a head shop or go to a gas station that sold K2 and spice. They're investigating it, and they see Kratom right next to it. And they're like, what's this? We don't understand it. I've read on, we do a little quick internet search, and some people say it's like a legal high. And so they just grouped it in along with that. I don't think that's what happened at the federal level. I do think that there is more of the conspiracy, the revolving door that we see play out so much in American politics. But ever since the DEA, so back in 2016, it later was revealed a couple years later that it was actually the FDA that went to the DEA to try to encourage them to add Kratom to Schedule 1, along with LSD and heroin and cannabis of all things, which is probably going to be pulled off hopefully sooner than later. And they encouraged them to add it to Schedule 1 through an emergency scheduling process, which would have been unprecedented. Thankfully, there was massive pushback, and we really saw the sleeping giant awake because, as I said before, so many people benefit from Kratom. It's literally given them their lives back. They were willing to call their congressperson. They were willing to go march on Washington, and so they backed off of that. But since then, since they failed in their effort to just ban it at the federal level, top down, the FDA has taken to working with state governments and counties and cities to try to ban it. Thankfully, there's a really effective group called the American Kratom Association, and they're a trade industry association. And they're actually, anytime the government tries to ban or prohibit Kratom, they go in and introduce what's called the Kratom Consumer Protection Act, which is actually passed in Utah and a couple other states, I believe. And it essentially legalizes Kratom and regulates it and ensures that testing takes place so there's no adulteration or anything added to it. And it requires Kratom vendors to register with the government and stuff. So I'm not a huge fan of all the stuff that's in there because I think when government regulates things sometimes, especially in the medical field or in natural products, there can be problems. And again, this whole revolving door and trying to weed out competition takes place. But when compared to prohibiting it outright or banning it outright, it's definitely much more beneficial. So yes, I do think that Kratom is starting to go the way of CBD and cannabis and is becoming more popular and more legitimized.
Yeah. Thank goodness. Because we definitely have an opioid issue that needs to be addressed. And I do think that this is definitely a way to help some folks out. Now, just a quick mention for those who are listening that might be in Alabama, Arkansas, Indiana, Rhode Island, Vermont, and Wisconsin. Kratom is still illegal in your states. So just keep that in mind at this point. So Moving forward in this subject, John and I were talking a little bit about his business, by the way, which is known as Brave Botanicals, and you can find him online. And we were talking about how can someone purchase Kratom from him when we don't have the backing in terms of being able to use credit cards to purchase online. So, John, let's talk a little bit about how folks can get Kratom from you, how the e-check policy works, and what do folks do if they live in the 6 states that Kratom's illegal in?
Yeah, so unfortunately, the government is making it hard for people to vend Kratom, as are social media companies. So I had my Facebook advertising account shut down for doing advertisements about Kratom. I've also had YouTube accounts banned as well. So in order to overcome that, I decided, because I'm really passionate about Kratom, I've seen how beneficial it is, I decided I'm just going to give Kratom away for free. So we actually have a free offer where you simply pay $5 for shipping and handling, and we'll ship you a free ounce of green Kratom, one of our most popular strains. It's very well-rounded and versatile. So people can go to freeounceofkratom.com, freeounceofkratom.com, pay $5 shipping and handling, and we'll ship an ounce to try, which is around 2 weeks worth of Kratom if you were to take it every day. And so, unfortunately, again, the government did this program during the Obama administration called Operation Choke Point. They originally said it was to stop money laundering, but what they ended up doing was using it to stop credit card processors from doing business with CBD, Kratom, head shops, adult toy stores, firearms dealers, and they did this workaround. So even though all those things are legal, CBD is legal now, the government would put pressure on the banks, which in turn put pressure on the credit card companies. But we found a nice workaround that's super safe and secure. It's called e-check. It's essentially an electronic check where you enter your checking account and routing number on our website, which is all secure and encrypted. And there's a service called Green Money, green.money. They're one of the most reputable e-check processors out there. They mainly cater to the cannabis industry. They have an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau. We've been using them for over 2 years. We've never had any issues. And essentially, it's like an electronic check. So unfortunately, we can't accept credit card and debit card, which is what most people are used to when making online purchases. But we do have e-checks. And for people that are even concerned with that, we just launched an option for people to mail a check or a money order. Or if it's for the $5 free ounce, then you can mail a $5 bill if you want to fold it up in a piece of paper. But we also accept Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies as well. So I've had to be really crafty and creative in this business. And, I've thought about hanging in the towel before, but it's just helped so many people and helped me. And I'm going to keep it going. So I'd love for your listeners to take advantage of the free ounce opportunity, because there's no better way to really understand Kratom than to try it. And there's also an opportunity, once you add the free ounce to cart, you'll be presented with a one-time offer to try our 4 other varieties, including 2 red varieties and a white variety, for 50% off. It's only $28.75. plus the $5 for the free shipping, and you'll get all 5 of our different types to try.
Now let's talk about the different types that you have, because I think a lot of folks might be wondering, like, okay, we talked about the green, we talked about the white, we talked about the red, but they have names. And I think it's good to kind of get a little synopsis of what these names mean and what they can do in terms of the health fix that these folks might see from them.
Sure. And the different colors mainly refer to the color of the leaves and the color of the veins. It's not as specific or cultivated as cannabis strains, which they're like really, serious about the seeds and keeping cross-contamination and stuff. It's mainly like the region that the kratom is grown in and the plant, the trees, and they drop their seeds and they cultivate them and keep them going. And then certain ones have a different effect and certain ones consistently have the same color leaf. And then there's a whole thing that goes on through the drying process. And the point is, I don't think it's as scientific as the cannabis strains, but we've been using the same vendor for over 2.5 years, like I said, and we have consistently had the same color, the same effect, so on and so forth. So the 2 red varieties that we carry, one of them is called OG Bali, and the other one's called Red Relaxation. The OG Bali tends to be a little stronger of the 2, and it has more of an orangish tone. It also has more of a floral smell, which I think really strong floral smell. It actually smells good. I did an interview with someone earlier that's one of my customers, and he said that the OG Bali was really strong and he prefers the red relaxation. So I do have some customers that I know for a fact were coming off of opioid dependency and like a pretty strong drug addiction, and they prefer to use the OG Bali. The actual strain name is Red Bali. And then the red relaxation is a red Mang Da. The Mang Das tend to be potent, really popular ones. So we have red relaxation and OG Bali. Those are the two red ones. And then as far as the white goes, we have White Lightning, which is a white Mang Da. This used to be the one that I would take regularly. This was my favorite strain since switched to Super Green Dragon, which I'll share about. But the White Lightning is a white Mang Da. It tends to be the most uplifting and motivating, energetic. It's good if you're in business or entrepreneur or you work long hours in the service industry, for example. It helps to give you a boost when you're starting to feel a little drowsy or you're just kind of losing that energy. It helps with stress and anxiety. Some people that quit drinking will make drinks, and they'll, if their friends are going out to party or going to happy hour, they'll bring their Kratom a drink along so they can still feel, like they're participating in drinking stuff, and it helps to lower the urge to drink. And then because it helps with stress and anxiety, many people say that they help enhance sociability. So if someone's generally pretty anxious or nervous around people, it can help kind of take the edge off. So you might be able to be at ease and socialize a little easier. So that's the White Lightning. And then the two green varieties are Green Mang Da, which is our most popular strain, and Super Green Dragon. The Green Mang Da is uplifting. It's good for stress and anxiety. And it's a very well-rounded one. If you take a very small amount, it can give you a little boost of energy, be uplifting. If you take a larger amount, it can be a little more sedating and better for pain. It is a little bit too so some Kratom vendors don't want people to say that that gives you euphoria. It's not euphoria like smoking a joint of THC cannabis, but it does. Some of them do feel good, right? I'm not going to deny that they feel good. And the Green Mang Da, in my opinion, feels good, which is why I prefer the Super Green Dragon, because I take it as an entrepreneur. I take it as a father too. And like my kids, they're 6 and 8. If they're just going crazy and they're like fighting with each other and I feel like I'm losing my patience a little bit, I'll have some Kratom, and it really just helps mellow me out and be a little more smooth and gentle. And so that's what I like as an entrepreneur too. I'll wake up and have some coffee or some yerba mate sometimes, usually around like 8 a.m. or so. And then usually around noon or 1 o'clock, I'll start to feel that I'm getting a little bit cloudy or a little foggy. Or if I have a ton of tasks and I'm just feeling a little overwhelmed, I'll pour up some of the Super Green Dragon, and it helps get me that little pop of alertness and motivation and focus. And it also helps to kind of just ease the sense of overwhelmingness or any stress or anxiety I'm feeling. So those are the 5 strains. There's 2 greens, 2 reds, and 1 white. And when you do the free ounce, you'll get an ounce of the green Kratom. And then if you take advantage of the one-time offer, then you can get all 5 of them, and it'll come out to a total of $33.75. They normally sell for $15 each, so normally it's $60, but you can get them all for $33.75.
That's cool. That's a really nice way to sample everything to see how things are going to work for you. Mm-hmm. Now, one of the things I realized I didn't ask you, and I want to hear, on average, how long does it take for Kratom to start working once you take it? And probably based on different types of ingestion too.
Sure. I did an interview earlier and I shared this story. One of my first epiphanies with Kratom myself, the mother of my kids and we used to do these cross-country road trips. We lived in a converted school bus, and we would drive around the country promoting Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies. And we would spend only Bitcoin. And we were funded by sponsors who paid for radio advertisements and podcast advertisements. And we would write articles as well. And we also had our kids with us. So I was the only one that would drive the bus around, and we had to get to different meetups and stuff. And I started to get really stressed and anxious because I had a long stretch of driving. I was tired, and I was behind on a couple of the podcasts, and I had some bills to pay back home. In order to pay them, I had to convert the Bitcoin into dollars and deal with all that. So I was feeling really anxious, so much so that I started having chest pain, which has only happened to me a couple times in my life. And so this was back when I wasn't taking Kratom regularly and just had started selling it at my store. And so I pulled the bus over, it's 40-foot, 4-ton school bus, and poured up a drink of Kratom. And I put in a teaspoon in like 12 ounces of water. And I started drinking it. And literally, as I'm drinking it, like 3 sips in, the chest pain just completely dissipated. And not only that, I also had a change of perspective in my mind. So it wasn't only an effect on my body, but it also shifted me from a feeling of scarcity and fear and like everyone's going to be upset that we're behind on these podcasts to one of like abundance and gratitude. Like, we're doing cool stuff. People are understand that we're on a cross country trip and we got to drive, and it's okay if we fall behind. We'll get to it at our next stop. And that was a big takeaway. So just wanted to use that story to answer your question. You can almost feel the effects immediately as you're drinking it. Like I feel it right when I start drinking it now, but sometimes it takes like 5, 10, 15 minutes as you're drinking it. If you were to ingest capsules, of course, it would take, maybe 30 to 40 minutes as your body breaks down the capsule. But if you drink it, you can feel the effects almost immediately.
Good.
And they last about 4 to 5 hours or so. I like to get like 16 ounces of water, 2 good-sized teaspoons. Again, if it's your first time, you probably only want to do half a teaspoon on a full stomach. I always do it on a full stomach anyway. And then I'll drink that slowly over the course of an hour or so. And then I'll add more water and continue to drink that same dose for another hour or so. So all in all, I'll be drinking the Kratom for about 2 hours or so. And the effects are the strongest as you first start drinking it, and then you kind of dilute it, and it just kind of continues the effects real mildly. It's very mild. If you take a whole lot of it, the euphoria can be kind of strong, or the sedative effect can be kind of strong. But if you just take a small amount, a couple capsules, half a teaspoon, it just is really a nice enhancement to the way that you're feeling. Or if you're feeling chronic pain and you take some, it just kind of helps to ease that pain a little bit by interacting with your opioid receptors. It also interacts with your serotonin and dopamine receptors, which is why it helps with stress and anxiety and an overall sense of well-being.
Huh. Nice. I did not know that.
Mm-hmm.
Very cool. Thanks for sharing your story about that. Because I think a lot of people are wondering, obviously everyone's going to be individual in terms of when things are going to hit. I think for a lot of people, one of the biggest complaints I have is that CBD takes too long. And speaking of that, do you ever combine CBD and Kratom together?
Yeah, we also sell CBD. We have some CBD oil, and we just started selling CBD flower, which is just the buds of CBD, which is really cool and super relaxing. But they do enhance one another. They're very synergistic, the CBD or the THC and the Kratom. They can work well together. Sometimes it may be a little much for someone. I found with CBD, it's very mild and mellow. I would say that Kratom has more of an effect on your body and your mind than CBD. Okay. And I have noticed that the people that benefit from CBD the most are those that have inflammation and are experiencing pain. If you're like normally pretty chill, you're not feeling anxious or stressed, and you're not in pain, then the effects of CBD will be very mild, maybe even unnoticeable. And of course, it also varies. If you take a 150 milligram compared to a 1500 milligram, if it's good stuff, you should be able to feel a 1500 milligram.
Absolutely, you should. But I have some people who, let's put it this way, are looking for a nice effect of the pain relief, but also having a little bit of the relaxation on top of it. And they don't want the THC involved in the mix. And so I'm thinking about ways that folks can integrate the Kratom and the CBD together nicely. Now, tell me, in terms of your CBD flower component here, have you had folks mixing a little bit of Kratom with the CBD flower at this point, that they've told you anyway?
Well, I just launched it yesterday. No,
okay, never mind.
Today's Monday. I just launched it today, but I myself have mixed the CBD flower with Kratom, and it's great. I mean, I take Kratom regularly, and like I said, I take a few days off here and there to give my body an opportunity to reset. But having the Kratom and having the CBD flower I think it just really creates a nice synergistic, mellow, like chill kind of thing. And the CBD compared to the THC, like many people will consume THC and they have that paranoid kind of weird edginess, or like, are people laughing at me, or that guy looking at me, you know, kind of weirdness. The CBD flower doesn't have that, but it does have, you know, it doesn't get you high, but it does make you feel good and kind of, oh, wow, this is nice, without the added weirdness that some people experience with THC.
I like that. Thanks for sharing that. I know I kind of put you on the spot with a lot of questions today, and I just love to hear stories from folks out there, because I think a lot of folks hear me going on and on again about certain things, but they don't always get the continued stories that I have in terms of patients and whatnot. So I think they like to hear from other folks too. So thank you for sharing. I really, really appreciate you sharing all that you have on your experience. And of course, as always, folks, you know that I'm always safety first, and definitely get in touch with a naturopathic doctor and herbalist, you know, somebody who is experienced with mixing these different herbs for the best effects, so that you do not get yourself into trouble. So, John, tell us where everybody can find you online again, just so that we can promote your website and folks can get to the free ounce of kratom.com and all of that different stuff effectively, so they can try things out.
Yeah, if somebody wants to be my friend on Facebook, they can search me. My name is John Bush. I think there's a few other John Bushes, but I'm the coolest one there. The friendliest. And my company's called Brave Botanicals. Our main website is mybravebotanicals.com. And our homepage is built like a landing page. So if you just go there and scroll down, there's all sorts of information and text and a little video about Kratom. And then for people to take advantage of the free ounce, all you have to do is go to freeounceofkratom.com and pay $5 shipping and handling. And again, the most popular way to do that is through the e-check, which is totally safe and secure. And then we'll send you a free ounce of green kratom to try. And I encourage people to take advantage of that one-time offer, 50% off for all the 4 other strains. And they get a nice wide variety. And if people like it, feel free to share with friends and family and associates, and we can get the word out about this amazing plant medicine.
Thanks so much, John, for coming on the podcast and sharing all of your information.
Yeah, thank you so much again for having me.
Subscribe, rate, and share info.